Now, the NHS is preparing to build temporary Nightingale hospital units to house extra COVID patients. Over 10,000 people are currently in hospital in England with COVID. But a big question has always been, are these hospitalisations because of COVID, or do they have COVID but are being treated for something else? Well, new figures from NHS England suggest almost 50% of English COVID patients were actually initially admitted for a reason other than COVID. Nearly 1 in 5 had caught COVID from within the hospital, but are still counted in the hospitalisation figures.
Well, Jamie Jenkins is the previous head of health at the Office of National Statistics and independent statistician. Jamie, really good to see you this morning. Thank you very much indeed for joining us. I'm hoping you crunch the numbers for us and shed some light on
well, we know why you've been crunching the numbers, because we had a guest on the programme earlier who came out with this claim that we've heard elsewhere that 90% of people in ICU are unvaccinated. That's a wrong figure, isn't it?
Yes, Simon, and in part, I think part of the reason we get in this is that Sajid Javid, Nadine Dorries, the Prime Minister, and many news journalists as well, they're all coming up with this 90% figure. The most authoritative number we do actually have is from the ICNOC, so they kind of look at all the intensive care units, they do a lot of research, they've matched all the vaccination status from the NHS to all the patients that have gone on into kind of intensive care. And what we do know is in England, the latest estimate is around 48% of patients that are in intensive care are unvaccinated. Now, remember, the vast majority of people in the population are vaccinated. So unvaccinated people are overrepresented, but we also know that people who've got kind of obesity, that extreme obesity, are way overrepresented as well in intensive care. So there's a number of different factors that kind of imparts why you may end up in intensive care. But I think yesterday, Boris Johnson, the Prime Minister, is slightly changing the definition a bit as well. He was saying that around 9 in 10 people in some of the intensive care units that he'd been speaking to had been in intensive care and hadn't been boosted. So obviously that would include people who've been double vaccinated, and some of those may not have had an opportunity to have had the booster yet. So I think just got to be a bit of caution that some of the politicians are going out there misleading the public with some of the numbers.
It's good to fact check this. And the interesting thing about this is the trend, because that figure you gave, 48%, that goes for the first half of November. In October, it was 47. Back in July, it was 73%. So, I mean, it's positive news, if you like, and the balance is getting back to where it should be. I just wonder what you think about this constant battle, and it's whether it's online or if it's on telly, of this battle of the figures, which is causing real problems. And there we see demonstrations on the streets yesterday because people don't seem to have a grasp of the facts.
No, I think part of the problem is this kind of irresponsible journalism from some of the newspapers. I've seen examples where they'll read a story in one newspaper, repeat it in another one, and then obviously people read the newspapers, trying to do newspaper reviews, and people quote the same figures, and then it just starts kind of spreading. I think the more important thing now, Simon, as we go through the pandemic, this part, is that we've seen these record case numbers. That's why I've been crunching the numbers in terms of how many people are in hospital because of COVID or just happen to be in with COVID. And helpfully the NHS in England do publish these numbers. And what they've been kind of identified recently, we're starting to see more people going into hospital from the community that happen to just test positive, but they would never have been admitted in the first place had they only just had COVID. It was for the other reasons. And that's about 29-30% of people. And then if you add on top of those patients who are added into the figures each day, who have gone in and then say over a week, 2 weeks later have caught COVID in the hospital, you start to get towards 50% of the kind of population in the hospital with COVID have actually either caught it in the hospital or have been admitted and not needed to be admitted specifically for COVID. So these are important because you just imagine a scenario, we've got huge numbers of cases. If we had 100% of the population had Omicron, in a very extreme example, then 100% of all the deaths would be COVID related because they look at people who've got a positive test, and everybody in hospital will be in the figures. So we've got to treat with caution as we see the rising hospitalisation numbers. How much this is putting extra pressure on the NHS. It's going to be important to distinguish between how many would have been in anyway versus how many extra patients are going in because of the variant.
There is out there people looking at all the media outlets and wondering who to trust. Where should people go? The ONS, is it clearly written out? If someone types in what are the actual figures, is that information readily available?
Well, the ONS tend to focus specifically more on the deaths figures, and they do the antibody survey as well. The official numbers that we get come from a range of sources, so it is very difficult out there. You've got Scotland, Wales, England all publishing information separately. You've got the government dashboard, which tries to collate as much, but then you kind of need to be a little bit of an analyst to go in and identify. I do update on my Twitter feed, Stats Jamie, the figures each day as well, to try and educate and keep people up to date with what's going on across the country. Because it's with all of this information, and it's not just in the UK, we've got information coming out of Denmark now showing how Omicron variant isn't as kind of strong in terms of putting you into hospital as what we've seen in the UK. So try and educate people with a range of different numbers. There are a lot of numbers out there, Simon. I think the important thing, like I say, is don't focus too much on these rising number of cases. Let's focus on the death figures as well. And they're still coming down. There's a bit of a time lag, but the effect of the vaccine can be seen in you. We are still seeing death figures come down, and it's going to be hospitalizations and deaths that are going to be the crucial figures as we go through the next month or so.
Jamie, it's really good of you to put us all straight on that, and thank you very much for that. And could you go on Twitter and say that we've actually got it right now?
Yeah, I will, yeah, no problems.
Bless you. Thanks, Jamie. Nice to see you.